Howdy do, Karen Adamski here with ShamaMama.com. Are you ready to relax your brain? For this neurographic lesson, all you need is some paper, a Sharpie or some kind of marker, a couple of pebbles. I'm also going to be using the cap from a glue stick, but you could use something like a penny or a dime. And the reason we're doing that is because we don't want straight lines here. We want things to go completely out of our control. So we're just going to push those little pebbles across the page with our Sharpie. And what we get are these beautiful little lines. In those little spots where your pen may have come up, just go ahead and connect the line, because ultimately we're going to have several lines running through this paper that go from one end of the paper to the other. And the reason that this is such a fun and easy way to disconnect, it's because we don't have control, number one. We also don't have expectations. This is a practice where we really don't know what the outcome is going to be, and that's okay. We're not starting with the intention of a masterpiece. I'm going to go ahead and bring this cap in here just as an example. And again, just push, 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 and it kind of has a mind of its own, and you just help it along. And it really is the driver. You're not the driver, I'm not the driver. That little pen and that cap and gravity, that's the driver. So you go ahead and just push these lines through. And once you have enough there that you're like, okay, I like the way that looks, grab all of those lines that are not fully off the page and drag them off the page. We don't want any straggling lines. We don't want to see the ends of any lines in the middle of our canvas. Okay, and our next step, all of these spots where lines have crossed over one another, where they've intersected, we want to take those crossed areas and turn them into little round edges. So see how we have those hard kind of lines from the crossover? We want to smooth them out. There you go. So just taking those X's and rounding those hard X's off. And if you get lost, if you're like, oh gosh, what am I supposed to be looking for? Just look for where those lines intersect. We're looking for the intersection spots where they cross over one another. And then those hard edges where they crossed over one another, we just smooth them out with little curves, almost like little horseshoes. And take your time with this process. Again, this is a practice. This is not anything that we have an attachment to the outcome. Our attachment is to the process, to the fact that this here helps our brain relax. And this next step, you don't have to do this. This is a choice, artist's choice here. I like to go over and kind of smooth out my lines, make them a little bit more bold, get everything looking like it's running together nicely. But we're going to do the same exact thing at the end, so it really doesn't matter. It's just if you're in the flow and you feel like doing it, go for it. If you want to move on to the next step, then go ahead and do this. Time for color. Now that I've got all of those edges kind of rounded, all those intersection edges, I'm just going to go ahead and pick some spots and lay down some water. This technique is called wet on wet. It's because we wet the spot first and then we bring in some wet watercolor onto that and just kind of let it flow together. This is a nice, easy process. Again, we don't have a lot of control with it. But ultimately what we're going to be doing is filling in most of these, if not all of these little shapes here. So the first step here in the color process is figuring out what color to go with first. I'm choosing blue. And then figuring out which spots are going to be blue. Get them wetted up and then bring in that color. And really, we're going to be doing that same thing with all of the colors that we bring in. So I'm just using a watercolor palette. So you see that tray on the right has all of those watercolor pigments there that we can pull from. You can also mix those pigments as well. You can mix them before you put them on the canvas, or you could mix them on the canvas. And we'll do a little bit of that here so you can take a look at what that looks like. And again, there's no attachment to a right or a wrong here. I'm just going with the flow and figuring out where I want to put the colors. No real rhyme or reason, just do whatever feels right to you. Okay, going through the same process here, I wanted to just show you another tool. Rather than using a dry brush and dipping it in the water and the paint, you can use this brush pen that has a well within the pen part. That's where we fill it up with water. You can give it a little bit of a squeeze, and the water comes out that brush. So this is one of my favorite tools, and when I'm doing watercolor type work, I find myself always going back and using the pen brush more than anything else. And I think that's just because I travel a lot. It's a really great travel tool, and I'm kind of impatient, I think. This tool gives me the ability to keep all that clean water inside so I don't mess up my clean water. And I just kind of wipe off the brush between colors. And it speeds up the process a little bit for me personally. And so I love these, and I have them in all different sizes, and I use them all the time. So again, just bringing those colors in. I like to bring the colors around the outside first, just because it does help with the natural shadowing of things. And on this little green spot here, I am not wetting the spot first. So this is wet on dry. I brought the wet paint and put it on that dry little green thing there. And of course, I'm speeding up here. I've sped up my filming process so you can see the whole thing without it taking too long. And go ahead and pause here when needed. And now that we have all of our color down, we're going to go ahead with that Sharpie again and just draw over all of those lines and all of those intersection spots, just to give that bold look. It just gives everything a nice clean look. And again, we're not necessarily doing this for the art itself. We get this beautiful piece when we're done. That's like the bonus. But just tracing these lines over again, it's keeping our mind relaxed. It's keeping us in the process. So another reminder to just enjoy the process. Don't worry about the art that you are creating. And have you noticed that this happens to be a really good source of divination as well? Divination meaning that you can see things in something. I see faces here. I see a crab. I see an eyeball. I see a clam. I see a banana slug. What do you see? Along with the neurographic art, divination is another way to relax your brain. So really lean into that and enjoy the process. Have fun, take your time, and I'll see you in the next lesson.